Bitcoin dominance is flashing a major warning sign right now. It's potentially forming the same bearish reversal pattern that we saw at Bitcoin at $110,000 back in January, right before the massive drop. Now, what does this mean for the altcoins, you may ask? Could we be on the verge of a major rotation from Bitcoin into the altcoins, which will result in basically an altcoin rally? And also, we have the SPY ETF, which just reclaimed a critical level, indicating more upside for the traditional markets as well right here. Is the worst finally behind us, or is this just a brutal dead cat bounce setting up for an even more downside across all the markets? We'll be diving deep into it all today, so be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our videos that we upload daily. My name is Paul, this is DataDash, and you better grab yourself a strong cup of coffee this morning because I'm breaking it all down right now. If you'd like even more timely updates covering everything that you're about to see in today's video and a whole lot more, I share all my analysis, actionable setups, and market insights before all the big moves occur. You'll also get full access to my dynamic academy where I break down all the tools, indicators, and strategies that I use each and every single day to stay ahead in these markets. If you're interested in joining, just check out the link in the description down below. Just going to quickly recap Bitcoin here as we're pretty much trading around the same areas that we've been over the last few days. And after we saw such a sizable bounce from that $74,000, $73,000 region back above that $80,000 key level, that high time frame average that has just been so key over the last few months here. We got to move up to a more local time frame here, which was the quarterly average, which sat here at about 89,000, which was a likely area to be met in the quarter, it's quarter two of 2025. This was also a really key region for myself as we stair-stepped it up from this area, because this was the overall range low that basically signified if we were going to break into this area here, likely that we would travel up towards our natural target at this point, which once you enter a range, whether it's from the top or the bottom, the most natural target is going to be this white line here, this point of control. That's where the highest amount of volume takes place within a range. And we can see that we are slowly getting up to this region, if not already hit it, depending on what exchange you're looking at, which is about $96,700. Now, for me, a really good sign of strength is living above these two levels that we have been so far doing, where you can see where we've closed daily candles now for the last several days, right above this 3M level, which is a quarterly level. If you zoomed out to the quarterly charts, you'll see that this was a really high level of resistance for us to reclaim, essentially, and we have so far done it. Realistically, could come back a little bit here and back test some of these highs. Back test the quarterly average here at 89,000, which is also in turn our range low, right? So very often we'll see a break in, a back test of the low, and then you'll run it up to that point of control if you haven't already made it to there. This is overall though, where, if we push back down or drop down to this 89K first, or we just push higher from here, the biggest region and area on the chart that we really want to see the reaction from, and just have to gauge it as it comes. Personally, I lean a bit more bullish here. Once again, just because we are, in the manner that we have come from this region here, and the way that the news was so at extremes down at the lows here, where everyone was just completely okay with the idea and falling into the idea that the market would just collapse from there with all the tariff fears. Generally, that's not how the markets work, right? When everyone eventually gets on the same page. Same thing occurred right here. We had the extremes, right, where everything just seemed so incredibly bullish. There was nothing that would have indicated a pullback to these levels when we were trading at 110,000. How could it be? Same thing just occurred down here, right? When we're trading at $74,000, and I was talking on these three areas right here, it seems like it's impossible, right? Especially when we just have slow downward movements and just consistent drops here. And then, of course, we get very quick moves back up. Same thing in reverse, right? When we get these slower moves up over time, and then you get the elevator down. This is usually what I consider it. But anyways, folks, this is a crucial area that we are coming into. I won't lie, right? So even though I do lean a little bit more bullish in the idea from these lows here, that we will probably, not probably, but I would like to see this actually rotate this whole range, which means going from low to high. All right. So yet to be seen if we actually come back test the low before we see things like that. But the point of control is our next major area to flip at that $96,000 area. This is also our gold pocket. So it's really crucial to get through this region to see continuation to the upside, right? We could very well come all the way up to this area here, get a rejection, and that could set us up for quite a sizable rejection, right? So that's really why it's so important that we get through this region. Like I said, so far we've seen a really good bit of strength. We swept the lows, which triggers a couple of things here, right? That's a liquidity sweep. You leave people sidelined that just hope and pray for a pullback as we just continue higher and higher and higher. Eventually, they end up buying around the highs, unfortunately. And for me, the way we've just slowly reclaimed that 80K, we've gotten out above these regions here. We're closing dailies around this area here. I do lean that this is a little bit more stronger than I think many would give it credit for at the moment. But as a technician, I will have to admit that we are just doing nothing more than coming into a simple golden pocket retracement where we've seen our high put in place. We've got a nice low at the moment, just pulling a Fibonacci retracement from that high to low. And that gold pocket area does line up perfectly with our point of control, which is our natural target within the range. So there's some confluence around all these areas, right? It is crucial that we get above this region and we start closing daily candles above there. I will point out a situation where we have seen a very similar result, and it resulted in a further drop to the downside. And this is just an example, not looking at this as like a straight copy and paste or a fractal or anything of that nature. This type of move happens all the time. This is just a really higher time frame version. And it's right back here in April of 2021. We had the high, we had the low, right? We had a push back up into the gold pocket before we continued lower. So this is the biggest cautionary thing I just would like to put out there, is that something like this is possible if we do reject from that gold pocket region, right? And we spent this is a daily time frame. We spent a lot of time up here before we fully did reject. So two things happened here as well. You had a nice, actually an altcoins rally for the time being, while Bitcoin kind of stalled out a bit. However, that was short-lived after we ended up pulling back there. So I do just want to highlight that this is a very similar thing that we see time and time again. So it is crucial that we don't see a significant rejection from this region, because that is the setup that takes us back down. Obviously we'll have to stair step it along the way, but from here, coming back down, losing 80K for the second time, that would, to me, look like a huge sign of weakness and continuation to the downside. And I would be saying that we'd probably be looking for a sizable correction off the back of that. Now, personally, and not just because the price action is bullish right now, and I'm bullish because of that, just the way that I'm looking at things, and to me, am looking, once again, the biggest key point here will be to push through this region and effectively come above these highs right here. Because at that point, we do have basically you're transitioning from that downtrend to an uptrend, right? Where we've got our low, we come up, we make a higher high right here, probably get a pullback back down towards that $89,000 area. I'm just speculating here. Put in a higher low and continue from there, right? So something along those lines can be had if we push through that region. So it's really just a crucial level here. And either way, even if we were to see something along the lines of pushing into this area, getting rejection, I would say that we'd probably spend some time up here, maybe a week or two, which will lead into the altcoin seeing some sizable moves, which some of them have already started to see. And that leads me over to the Bitcoin dominance chart. So Bitcoin dominance has just potentially put in a bearish harmonic pattern up at the highs, which has taken about 3 months to take place. So the timing on it is pretty good. It's it's actually the exact same pattern that we saw on Bitcoin right before the drop down to $80,000. If you recall, back to that time frame, we had put in this high at $108,000 back in December. You had a low. We came up for a nice gold pocket retracement. Then we came down and took the lows, and then we came and took the highs. And that is what this pattern specifically is notorious for, right? This is called the shark. It comes down, takes the lows, comes up, takes the highs. When you have the completion zone up at the highs like this, it's very similar to a just ascending channel, ascending wedge, right? Any of those patterns that finish or trend higher are generally bearish and they break down. So this is a bearish setup with specific ratios as far as Fibonacci's go. And that's all that this is a sequence of Fibonacci's. Timing plays a role in it. And then the targets of this pattern are very specific. It is the 0.5, the 0.886, and then ultimately the 1.13. Obviously, it's not the end all be all as far as these targets would go. You come down and just get a complete reversal. But it's, for me, I try to note these when we're at the highs, because obviously I can make adjustments or prepare at least when we're trading at these levels versus before we come all the way down. So bearish pattern takes time to unfold. We potentially have the same setup here. And in this case, when Bitcoin dominance sees a pullback, the altcoins experience relief, right? Whether that be a rally of some sorts, at least a little bit of green, maybe they don't even pull back as much. But generally, we see a rally to some degree, especially when you have sizable moves to the downside, right? So, for example, when we had this move last, which was in December, I believe, or November was the high, and then we had that bit of probably a few weeks rally, which was pretty monstrous, honestly. Like, if you looked at a few things, obviously not everything, but this is when XRP had moved over 500% in that 1.5 month time frame. You had things like HBAR reaching 700% moves. Obviously, there was many others, 200%, 100% here. Like, it was all over the place, right? It was the majority of things. And this was about a 10, 11% downfall, right, in that time frame before we continued higher. To start off, if we were to see, this hasn't necessarily confirmed quite yet. I'm looking for a daily or weekly close below the X point, which is basically the high we made back here in February. So we're pretty much hugging that region right now. So come down and close below that area. I'm looking for the first major target of this is back to the 0.5. Then we have the 886. We also have a volume level here, high time frame average of price that's untapped right here. So there's confluence around this region. And honestly, the 0.5 is the main point in this setup because this is the area where if we do come down and catch a reversal, and that's likely to be where a low could be put in. But as soon as you lose the 0.5, there's no gold pocket support on this. It's straight to the 886. And then generally you consolidate a bit before you end up going down to the 113. And then for me, I've also noted out the value area low of our previous range, because similar to Bitcoin, where we didn't just stop at the targets of that pattern, we ended up going quite lower. I do foresee that this could be an area where we actually get a sizable reversal here on Bitcoin. That doesn't just stop at 59%. And just down to these targets here, this is about 8 to 10%. So it's a similar drawdown. If we see it, that was what we experienced back in November, which once again had incredible rallies on several assets. And then majority of altcoins did at least not crash. Taking a look at some altcoins, since we're discussing a potential for a little bit move higher here, I just want to bring up XRP really quick. We're trading in a really nice range here, barring one move down to potentially $2, which is just below these current lows. And we have a weekly volume level just below there. It's the bottom of the range as well. That'd be kind of the next area I'd look to for big support if we got to push down from here. But granted, we're seeing some pretty decent highs, higher lows. I do anticipate the uptrend may continue from here. And we've got a couple of high targets just above us. And I mean that by high time frame and volume levels and things like that are basically converging here. So that's about 233 and 242. Ultimately, the high side of the range back at 260. And then from there, we'll gauge to see if we get a break higher. So much like that bearish harmonic pattern that I just showed you on Bitcoin dominance, where we had the completion zone at the highs, and the same thing on Bitcoin, that was the shark. Which once again, notorious, taking the highs, taking the lows, and then reversing again. We had the same setup here in a bullish fashion on Solana as well as ONDO, which I've highlighted a few times. But just wanted to show you the power of these. It's really, really incredible, right? So we got the move down here. We had a quarterly untapped point of control right at $97, which was right in the completion zone for this setup here. It was also right below all the lows. It was also right below $100 psychological level. It just really had a great setup here for this to be a big region. Now, for me, this is where I actually added a good position for a spot buy and hold, not like a short-term move by any means. But for this setup here, we are looking to run this back up to approximately our quarterly target, which is going to be $177. That's really just a speed bump along the way because this pattern, once again, like I said, biggest target here is going to be your 0.5 Fibonacci. This is going to be an area that's going to probably offer up a bit of resistance to the point where even if we don't completely reverse from there, it's going to probably see a sizable pullback around that area, which is about 196, just shy of $200. And then if we actually push through there, once again, no gold pocket resistance at this point on this setup, it'll probably more than likely run straight to that 886, which is at 274. Consolidate for a bit. The end all target of this setup just locally is actually up at $323. But the main one at this point, let's just take it step by step. does sit at 196. And it's been a sizable move already. So this is up about over 60%. Even though I'm anticipating to go higher, obviously for even myself, as far as risk management goes, I don't tend to chase things once it's up like that. Obviously everybody's got their own risk management and tolerance that they're willing to do, because it's one of those things that can still very much go higher. But the risk for a pullback from entry at this point is just higher, right? So for me, I'd look for a pullback always. I always look for the red day. There's always a red day. But if you're in, or if you hold these assets already, that's what, hopefully I'm pointing out where we could see and why, and that is helpful to you in some way. ONDO, similar setup here, right? 73 cents was my major area where I ended up actually selling out of ONDO from my summer buys last year, about 69 cents, right at $2. When we swept the high back in December. And the reason being was just because I anticipated this setup to occur. Did I know it was going to occur? Absolutely not. I took the risk. Obviously, I was also up a couple 100%. And I was just willing to either let this go up without me from there, or I was hoping to see a pullback and then re-enter and double my positions potentially. And from that area down to my entry, it did fall over 60%. So I was able to basically double my holdings in this case. And then as far as this would go, this setup is now pretty decently underway here. We're already up, similar to Solana, about 60%. All right, we can see our high time frame average, right? So our quarterly target for this quarter has been met here at $1.05. And that is the key region for now to see if we flip that and claim that, start looking for 4-hour candles above, daily candles above. And overall, the first major target of this is actually up at 140. And then that's the key line in the sand to see if we flip that or if we get a sizable rejection. After that, it would be 197 and then 234. SUI is one that's grabbing a lot of attention right now. And much like ONDO, this was another one that had reached a pretty specific highs back in November, even though the rest of the market was still really running. I did anticipate a pullback into these regions here, and this was the exact targets given in the Discord, actually. And since then, right, we've traded around that low of the range. And this is a really good example I like to give of why leverage isn't necessarily needed for these altcoins. You'll sometimes see myself or whoever utilizing leverage, obviously, with trades. I usually don't do it with anything but Bitcoin, and that's just not my long-term holds by any means, but that's just while we're waiting on some of these big moves to occur. There's obviously shorter-term plays that are available, and occasionally leverage can be a useful tool in that case, but only for Bitcoin and really Ethereum. For me, otherwise the altcoins are just, they just move so violently that there's really no reason, right? I just would rather come in at key regions, not lose any sleep. Yes, you might be underwater for a bit, right? If we're looking for the bottom of this range, and this is where pretty much I was looking to pick it up. At some point it was down 16% here. Okay. In the world of crypto, we all know that that's not necessarily the end all be all. But for me, I was willing to see if we were going to get a decent little bounce out of this, at least back to our quarterly average, right? Which we have since then done, right? So we got a nice bounce right off the low of the range here. We're up about 80%, not one I would chase by any means, even though I could see this going higher, right? So currently we're running into our 382 resistance, and that's just a Fibonacci pull from the high down to the low. We're getting a little bit of rejection here, looking to hold this quarterly pivot, which is once again that high time frame average for support around 320. Otherwise, probably look for a sizable pullback, something like a gold pocket all the way back down to this region. But as long as the strength is here, right? Imagine that the high side of the range is something that we'll see in the near future here. It sits right at about $4. And then there's a little stack of confluence up here where we have a monthly volume level as well as the gold pockets in at 470 to 488. Just another touch on APTOS here. APTOS is trading around the lows, although this has had a sizable little bounce here, about 30%, 40% now. Not as big of a move as some of these others have had, but once again, a little risky coming into something that's up 40%. As far as in the short term, right, when your entry is just a little bit at risk of seeing some downside pretty much right away, because if this does pull back, even just for a normal gold pocket, high or low situation, Bitcoin cools off, whatever the case is, right, we're up 40%, it'd be nothing to pull back 15 and still be bullish for the person that bought it here. But if you buy it up here, you're going to be underwater right away. So it's just a risk that anybody and everybody has to deal with. But otherwise, I'm looking for this to make a jaunt up to our quarterly average, sitting here about $7 just about. And then overall looking for a potential range rotation, even if nothing but that takes us back up to $10 to $12 and then reevaluate how things look at that point. So virtuals is seeing a huge rally off these recent lows here. And just to be clear, this is not something that I would suggest anybody jumping into right now or anything like that, even though, once again, these assets could still see sizable upside. It's just, this is already up now 160% in the last few days here. And it's just not something personally I would chase. But once again, I did want to cover it because they did have a little bit of news recently where they were coming up with some solutions to some protocols and things of that nature. And they are one of the, if not the largest AI agent platforms. So if that surfaces again, I see that a world where virtuals does get a sizable run. You'll note this box here, once again, put this on in Discord about 3 months ago, back in January, when we were trading around these regions here. And this was the area for myself, at least, where I would looking to basically accumulate. It's a pretty big box, I will say. But granted, when we were trading all the way at these areas here, which was $5.25, this was a 70, 80, and 90% drop into that area. So obviously, it's a high risk. This is probably, I would almost put this in the realm of like a low cap. I think it's $500 million market cap. So it's by no means a large cap opportunity. And with that comes a lot more risk, of course. So but for myself, I look for some of these opportunities as well as, the longer term plays with some of the top 100 and things of that nature. But I did see a sizable opportunity here with the buying opportunity down to 37 cents. We got down to 40, pretty much just been kind of picking it up in this region here. And so far, we've got a nice little bounce off of this. And for me, I am anticipating a move higher towards that $2 region. And we got 243 for the 382. Volume target at 261. Of course, we got some higher levels here, but even just for now, looking for that move up higher here. I wouldn't expect it in a straight line, similar to anything else. Probably likely we get a pullback first to a little bit of a gold pocket area, or maybe some current weekly levels and stuff like that. I think there is some upside here for virtuals here in the midterm here, right, in the next couple weeks, months, up back into this $2 to $250 range. We're trading currently at $1. And like I said, right now it's up. Like, we were down just about 39 cents. It's up almost 200% right now. So not something I would chase. But if you already have this asset, if you've been picking it up, if you've been holding it from higher, whatever the case is, right? That's obviously, I don't know the situation, but I would not suggest picking up anything that's pumped 200%, even if it could pump another 200%, right? That's just not good risk management, in my opinion. For me, I tend to identify these things ahead of time so that I can get in along these regions. And then, now you're at a way less of a risk if these things continue to head up, for one. And then if they do get a pullback at this point, you're not going to stress it as much. Okay. And similar to Bitcoin here, reclaiming and regaining some big levels here as far as upside would go. The SPY, which is the ETF that is measured against the S&P 500, saw a sizable drop with everything else into all the tariff woes, right? We got that nice bounce right off the gold pocket here, and it's just slowly been making its way up, and it's just regained the Q1 low, right? So this is where at this point, it's just I'm looking for areas to identify for where we're going to see some signs of strength. And for me, this is one of them. And for us to come up and reclaim this, once again, this is the best area to have been looking at and being involved in and interested in. Of course, the fear is too high for most people to do anything, and they're just thinking it's going to go lower. But now that we're up in these regions here, probably still not a huge go out and buy day. But if I'm looking for the next coming days here, I would actually anticipate, as long as we're holding above 546, which is that quarterly low on the daily time frame, that we will make our way up towards the, once again, high time frame average for this quarter, which is 572. Similar to anything else, flip that, and I'm looking for 602 at that point, and then from there gauge everything. And if we come up to this region here, and if Bitcoin pushes through to the high side of the range that it's in, meaning that we start living above that $97,000 gold pocket, all right, I fully anticipate this range to get rotated and Bitcoin to come up to $106,000. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for today's breakdown. I truly hope you found some value in it and got some new perspective on where the markets could be headed next. If you haven't already, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any of our upcoming updates. And of course, if you want even deeper market insights, trade setups, and access to all the tools that I use daily, be sure to check out the Discord link down in the description below. I would love to see you in there.